You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. You know, to keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
Howard Stern made his name by crossing lines and going against the grain. But when Greg Gutfeld called him out, something no one expected happened. Stern had no answer, no fiery monologue, no sharp comeback, just silence. And people took notice. Gutfeld didn't simply critique Stern's transformation. He portrayed him as someone who shifted from outsider to a piece of the very establishment he once ridiculed. It became a moment no one saw coming. So what unfolds when the original King of Shock gets confronted by someone even more outspoken? Here's what happened.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine. Or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back.
Some TV moments vanish the instant they occur. Others linger and fuel conversations across the board. The confrontation between Greg Gutfeld and Howard Stern was one of those moments people couldn't stop discussing. It wasn't simply a heated back and forth. It felt like two completely separate media universes colliding right on air. On one side stood Howard Stern, a man who spent decades crafting his identity as the ruler of controversial radio. On the other was Greg Gutfeld, walking straight into that fire without hesitation. By the time it was over, audiences were left arguing over who truly came out ahead.
But it is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, you know, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists.
Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss future videos. Howard Stern once transformed radio entirely. He built his name by saying things no one else would ever say. Bold, fearless, and totally unfiltered, he became the voice of defiance for people exhausted by polished media and safe talking points. Whether people admired him or despised him, one thing was undeniable: everyone recognized who he was. But staying the king of controversy for decades isn't simple. Over the years, Stern began to shift. Not overnight, but gradually, people started sensing he wasn't quite the same man who built his name on defying the rules.
I will say this, Dagan. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the Fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, you know, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get. But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Like a lot of diarrhea related.
Howard Stern was once seen as the ultimate outsider who challenged everybody. Now many view him as more of a refined celebrity interviewer, spending time alongside the same Hollywood crowd he once ridiculed. The man who built his career on chaos and confrontation began sounding far more careful and calculated with time. And Greg Gutfeld clearly picked up on that change. Whether you side with him or not, Gutfeld knows how to turn a TV segment into a standoff. His approach blends sarcasm, wit, and pointed criticism in a way that captures attention immediately. He's earned a reputation for targeting topics and public figures that others tend to sidestep. So when Stern's name surfaced during one of Gutfeld's segments, things didn't stay lighthearted for long. What started as a brief joke quickly turned into a direct strike on Stern's public persona. Gutfeld framed him as someone who transformed from an anti-establishment rebel into a product of the very world he once attacked. Here's that clip.
On his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, well, dude.
This wasn't simply a passing joke or a random shot from Gutfeld. He came after Stern with a specific argument to deliver. Rather than discussing him like a media icon, Greg presented him as someone who had fundamentally shifted from the person he once was. His point was straightforward but sharp. Howard Stern once built his name by pushing against the system, but now he appears to be a part of it. And in Gutfeld's eyes, that's the greatest fall a rebel can suffer, becoming comfortable within the very machine he once battled. What made the moment stand out was how composed Greg remained. He didn't need to raise his voice. He stayed calm, sarcastic, and precise while drawing a contrast between the old Stern, unpredictable, controversial, and bold, and the newer version who appears far more polished and entrenched in celebrity circles. That contrast became the core of the attack. The very person who once mocked fame and manufactured personalities was now being accused of fitting seamlessly into that same world. Greg didn't exaggerate it. He simply laid out the comparison and let the viewers draw their own conclusions. And for many watching, that irony landed hard. The former shock jock who once pushed back against the Hollywood crowd was suddenly being portrayed as someone who had fully joined it.
But Stern being holed up in his house that long, it explains a lot of things. Like how you forget how other people live, especially in hard times like a pandemic. For the longest time, 2 years in fact, the same time Stern's been AWOL, I wondered where he went. Not physically, but mentally. I bet you did too. Remember his screeds about COVID? They were epic and angry, and not to mention wrong.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Their freedom. I want my freedom.
The man who once built his identity around rebellion now appeared focused on something entirely different: acceptance. Acceptance from Hollywood, from major media, from the same mainstream world he used to resist. And that's precisely why Gutfeld's remarks landed so effectively. Gutfeld's entire approach is built on challenging prominent figures and tackling subjects others won't touch. So when he set his sights on Stern, it felt like more than just another TV dispute. It came across as one outspoken personality calling out another for losing what once set him apart. What truly stood out was Stern's reaction, or the complete absence of one. There was no notable comeback, no public outburst, no lengthy reply, just silence. And for many viewers, that silence said everything. Gutfeld didn't need to declare victory or celebrate the exchange. Many watching felt the moment had already made its statement. He presented Stern as someone far removed from the rebellious figure that made him a household name. The whole thing struck a nerve because it tapped into a broader idea people recognize constantly: what happens when someone who once challenged the system quietly becomes a part of it. And placed side by side, the contrast between the two personalities suddenly became impossible to ignore.
Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Howard Stern built his career in an era when breaking the rules carried real weight: fines, bans, and furious sponsors. That pressure helped forge his legend. Gutfeld comes from a different world, using sarcasm, humor, and cutting commentary rather than pure shock value. Their clash felt larger than a simple media rivalry. It resembled two distinct generations of rebellion going head-to-head. But what gave Gutfeld's criticism extra bite was that he actually respected the original Stern. The real strike was in the contrast between who Stern once was and who many people believe he has become today.
Happy Friday, America! Oh man, tonight is a special night. It's Feminine Friday, where all the panelists are women. Tonight we have Kennedy. Yeah! Jagan McDowell. Pat Tim. And Janine Garofalo. All right. A long way for a meat joke. Okay, I hope you had a good week. I did, and no thanks to Howard Stern. True, the New York Post reported that Stern hit a chic restaurant in NYC with a crew of A-listers, including Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, Jon Hamm, Justin Theroux, Jason Bateman. I was not invited.
Gutfeld's core point was straightforward. The old Howard Stern would never have admired the newer version of himself. The man who once targeted celebrity culture now appeared at ease within it, chatting alongside Hollywood stars instead of challenging them. Gutfeld, Stern had gone from fearless outsider to polished media personality. And once that idea spread, social media ran with it. Clips circulated everywhere as longtime fans debated the same question: can anyone remain a rebel forever, or does everyone eventually evolve?
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute.
It raised a deeper question for many watching. Does every rebel eventually become absorbed by the very system they once opposed? And once they grow comfortable, do they begin defending the same world they used to attack? Gutfeld's argument wasn't simply that Howard Stern had changed. He suggested the change was driven by a desire for acceptance and security, not some genuine personal transformation. The fearless broadcaster who once offended everyone suddenly seemed far more deliberate about what he said and whose feelings he spared. To Gutfeld, that didn't resemble growth. It looked like selling out. What made the moment even more compelling was Stern's silence that followed. A man famous for firing back at his critics offered almost no response. No lengthy rant, no public confrontation, just quiet. And that left people wondering whether Stern simply brushed it off, was caught off guard, or perhaps recognized some truth buried within the criticism itself.
This definition of woke, it's if you call someone a know-it-all, you're not complimenting them on the breadth of their knowledge. Yeah. You're saying you don't know as much as you think you know. So, yeah, woke doesn't have anything to do with vaccines. What it really means is sort of a slavish devotion to left-wing ideology and then repeating it so you can get social credit.
Right.
That's really what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're smarter than anybody. And he had said in another part of this set, because I believe in the science. Well, if you believed in the science, you wouldn't be hiding out like Howard Hughes in your mansion.
Many longtime fans were left asking what had happened to the old Howard Stern. It wasn't only that he stayed quiet following Gutfeld's criticism. It was how jarring that silence felt from someone known for always hitting back. Meanwhile, Gutfeld continued pressing the point, and the internet quickly joined the conversation. Clips and reactions spread rapidly, with many people agreeing that Stern no longer appeared to be the rebellious figure he once embodied. What made the exchange remarkable was that this wasn't simply celebrity drama. Gutfeld was challenging the legacy of a man famous for exposing hypocrisy and calling others out. And when someone builds a legendary reputation, people naturally measure them against their own past, sometimes more harshly than anyone else could.
I always hate that argument, like, what happened to the old Stern, or what people have changed. That's not what this is about. It's a weird disconnect.
Well,
What?
he hasn't changed.
No.
People have been calling him insane for 40 years.
Yeah,
that just used to be, this guy's nuts. And now they're like, oh, well, we're worried about Howard. He needs help.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you, though, I'm a little sympathetic because what you said is correct, but I'm also a germaphobe.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just have a smaller apartment.
Yeah.
So it's like
The entire moment felt larger than just a feud between two media figures. To many viewers, it resembled a generational handoff. Greg came across as the one carrying the bold, unfiltered energy that Howard Stern once built his whole career on. While Stern now appears more refined and mainstream, Greg leans into sharp humor, controversy, and saying what others won't. That's why the exchange resonated with so many people. It wasn't truly about politics, it was about authenticity and who still feels like a genuine outsider in today's media landscape. In that moment, Greg appeared to be the challenger willing to take on the system, while Stern seemed caught between the legend he once was and the image he carries today.
Striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate. But maybe that's the explanation. This is Stern's self-imposed penance for subjugating women to demoralizing stunts, capitalizing on desperate females thirsting for attention, even if it's from an oily paddle striking their bare asses.
Fair or not, perception carries enormous weight in media. And after this moment, people began raising some serious questions. Will Howard Stern ever reclaim the fearless style that built his name? Or will he continue along a safer, more polished road? And on the flip side, is Greg Gutfeld emerging as the new voice for audiences craving bold, unfiltered commentary? What gave the clash its weight was that it felt larger than a typical TV rivalry. For many viewers, it signaled a transition between two media eras. Stern was once the outsider challenging everything, while Gutfeld now appears to carry that same rebellious charge. Regardless of which side people supported, the exchange clearly struck something deep. It felt like a moment where one long-standing media figure was being challenged by someone newer, sharper, and still hungry to make his mark.